I'm going to have to move the mic up. There we go. I'm going to go out to my car later on. I'm going to see if there's 10 girls inside of it. I'll be at the 9 o'clock service tomorrow, so if you want to find 10 girls, you can put them in my car. I just want to go out there. I'm kind of dressed this way. It's kind of funny. My dad would always say, you dress cool, dude, as I was leave the house. So that's like why I'm in shorts and stuff like that. And I always wear like Dickie shirts and stuff like that and shorts. So it's kind of a tribute somewhat to him. So I'm going to be reading here a little bit and telling some stories off the cuff as I go along. So overwhelmed by the responses of my father's passing at 4 a.m. May 31st, 2016. Jesus welcomed him into his kingdom. He heard the words that he always wanted to hear. Well and done, my good and faithful servant. You're home. His pain and suffering here on earth are no longer. His breathing is no longer erratic. His back is no longer damaged or causing him discomfort. His right leg is now normal and without the muscle it was missing. His fight down in here on earth started in the womb. He would go on to have major surgery 8 days old and would have many more as the years passed. He served in the Air Force, but later was discharged because of his health. His heart for his country meant everything to him. His liberty and freedom were way more than just words. They were a way of life for him. Without liberty, there'd be no freedom. Seeing the Liberty Bell, my parents, their 10th anniversary, they decided to renew their vows at Patchogue Church of God, and they decided to go to Philadelphia. And I remember they brought the whole family, and seeing the Liberty Bell in person spoke volumes to them. The cracks that ran through the bell went to a certain word. The word was Philadelphia, or what became Philadelphia. It meant the word brotherly love. You cannot be liberated without brotherly love. And without being liberated and forgiven, how could you have freedom? There was a lesson he always taught me. Love one another, treat everyone with love. You will not know freedom inside when there's hatred. Across the top of the Liberty Bell, there's a scripture verse. It's Leviticus 25:10. It says, proclaim liberty throughout all the land and all the inhabitants thereof. Without God's love, you cannot be liberated, forgiven. You cannot have brotherly love. And therefore, you will not have true freedom in your heart. God wants us to proclaim liberty, to spread his message throughout the land to everyone who will hear, to those who have an ear, to those whose hearts are broken and are weary. The crack of the Liberty Bell does not stop at the word Philadelphia, brotherly love, on accident. There's a strong message there. God was able to talk to my dad through a cast iron bell. A tool that he's installed into me and my family. Love God with all your heart and to love one another as you would love yourself. The year was 1978, full-time in beautiful Watkins Glen at the racetrack. The trees were in their majestic colors of reds and yellows and oranges. I was turning 2. I don't remember this happening, but I've heard stories. Watkins Glen used to hold a yearly van event. My family was big into vans in the 70s, before the street rods, and it was pretty wild. My pops had a Chevy van, and it had flames all the way from the front of the nose all the way to the back, and it had the words wildfire written across the side of it. It was a pretty wild looking van. I don't know if there's any pictures of it, I think there is. But I remember just being 2 years old, they bought me a little red wagon, a little radio flyer wagon, and it had pinstripes on it. And I think that's where my love for the arts comes from having flames across the van and also seeing the pinstripe on my little red wagon. I came across a photo recently. Here I am, about to turn 2 in my little red wagon, with me sitting in it as it was being pulled. I looked at this photo closely, and I noticed not only am I sitting in the little red wagon, but it was also being pulled, and it had a barrel inside it that was full of alcoholic beverages. Yes, this is before you saved. See, this leads me to my story. about what I was able to get away with at 2 a.m. in the morning. I climbed into the driver's seat as everybody's half asleep, half the other people are still partying back in the 70s, and I laid on the horn and I yelled the words, "Party! Woo!" My mom wasn't too happy, I don't think, but I repeated this a couple of more times that night. So that was 1978, and this is where my mom kind of stole some of my material. Anyway, talking about how he got saved. But 1979, on July 3rd, would be the day that would change. It would change the world, it would change the legacy, and change the character of the Milano family. My dad had been through numerous back surgeries in the early 70s when my sister was born. He was in a lot of pain. But he would go still see her in the hospital. He would trudge through the snow, even with his back. He would still get there. My dad had a special bond with her because she was also born with some physical problems, like her arm. He had a tattoo on his right arm, which is also the arm my sister had a problem with. And there's a character from the movie Bambi. And so he got the skunk from Bambi named Flower on his arm. And he told my sister that, you know, she was his little flower, but that she was also his little stinker. True. When I was born, he was going to get a shaggy dog on the other side. He had her name underneath. I don't know why he wanted a shaggy dog. Never really explained it per se. He probably did, but it just didn't click. Not like the skunk anyway. Anyway, in 1979, he would walk into a church called Love Church. He grabbed the mic from Pastor Hollahan. Yeah. And he proceeded to preach that this world was going to hell in a handbasket. A few amens and preacher brothers arose from the church until they realized he was drunk or stoned. They carried and escorted him out into the parking lot until he finally broke down when somebody said the words, "Emil, you can't do it on your own anymore." It clicked inside of him. He was lost in this world. He was lost inside. His family was being guided in the wrong direction. On July 3rd would be the day that everything changed for himself and his family. No longer was it about him, his pride, and his independence. Independence. July 3rd, the next day was July 4th. The day that America celebrates her independence. Nothing became more important to him than God and family, but how could he live independently? He had to realize that he couldn't live life without the helping guidance of Jesus Christ. On July 3rd, it became something so much more to him and such more sweeter to him than independence.
Yes.
He became dependent on God.
Yes.
To lead him, to teach him the way. See, everything that led up to July 3rd, 1979 was about his reputation. It changed. It wasn't about him no longer and how he lived his life. From that point on, it's how he lived his life and his character. I lost my place. There we go. A year later, instead of booze being filled in my little red wagon, it was just me and my little blanket. And there's a picture of that somewhere out there too. You'll see me in my little pinstripe, little radio flyer. But conviction took over in his life, and God would guide him to the footsteps of life. Fast forward a few years, he became an elder in a church, and he would teach God's word in Bible studies at church and at our house. One Sunday, he would invite an elderly man who was nearly in his final years. He was a bit senile, but he still had some of his wits about him. We invited him over for dinner. I don't remember this man that much, but it's just that I remember them bringing him over to the house, and then I went out with my dad later on. We brought him back home. It's what took place that night that kind of changed the course of my life as a little kid. My grandfather, who I loved dearly, till, he had a rough life, and he became a happy man when he had grandchildren. It really changed him a lot. My grandfather was a hardworking man. He took my father at a very young age out with him one day, and they ended up in a bar, into a pub. He walked into that bar, and my father would remember as he looked down and looked around, and the words that came to him was that this is what men become as they get older. So my dad thought, to become a man, you had to be in a bar. You had to drink or you had to just socialize like that just to become a man. My pops brought this elderly man back home. He looked into my eyes as I glanced down, and I was staring at this checkerboard pattern that was in this house. He had the flashback at that bar. That bar had the same exact checkerboard panel as this house had. And the words came to my dad as he was molding me and teaching me as a young child. No, this is what a real man does, and this is what a real man becomes. A real man loves and takes care of others. Jesus gave us 2 commandments: to love one another and to love everybody and to love one another. My father taught me to be humble, to be loving, to become a blessing in the lives of people. If you want to make an impact, if you want to make a change, you have to change your character. Who you are or the words you speak can either snuff the life out of somebody and cause death, or it can grow and change the hearts of men. My grandfather would also accept Jesus Christ into his heart because he saw a change in my dad. He saw that the legacy of his family was going to be a blessing. Now, I can't go on without speaking about his love of hot rods. We had a whole bunch of them here last week. And it was pretty special that they came out. And Pastor was all in his glory, too. As an 8-year-old child, I remember going out with my dad. My dad fell in love with this 44 coupe that a guy from another concrete plant had. It was a 44 coupe with a 351 Windsor on the hood, B&M shifter, 57 dash from a Corvette, and it had the tail lights from the Corvette that flowed with the rear fenders. It fit perfectly. My dad fell in love with it, but we fell in love with it too. So now this is a time before GoPros and cell phones with the cameras and stuff, the videos. But I remember going out with my pops. We loved looking maybe into buying little antique car toys at some of the antique stores. So we went antique and looking for old little toys. I remember, sometimes we look around and some of the things that we liked became decor. We had a little wooden coal wagon that was in our backyard, but it ended up on our front lawn. My pops would be in the driver's seat and me looking over the dashboard or out the window in the passenger seat. Window rolled down, my arm outside the window. I was working on my farmer's can at a young age. My pops would hit the gas, the throttle would open, and with the sound of a thrap, the body of an 8-year-old child would enjoy pure bliss as the car shook and the tires squealed. He would shift down and back up, hitting the gas again. My love for hot rods started right then and there. I know he's enjoying his collection of hot rods in heaven. He's got his golden chariot. Maybe he's even got the 32mm Ford coupe from American Graffiti that he always loved. My dad started a magazine. It just came into his heart one day. It's something he always wanted to do. And my grandfather always taught him, he says, always go after something you love. And if you don't go after it, you're going to regret it later on in life if you never tried. So my dad did try. He ended up doing it. He did it for 5 years until he got sick. His thyroid, underactive thyroid, really did a number on him at the time. And it laid him up in bed for a couple of months almost. And they said it should have killed him then. And he was a pure fighter since the day he was born. So, just doing that magazine, we were out of state every single weekend. My mom had a 32 Chevy sedan at the time. We went to Florida a couple times in that thing. We went to Atlanta, Georgia a couple times in that car. And there's a 1932 sedan. It was all hot rodded. We went to Minnesota with the car, and it had like a late 70s, I think, Buick motor in there. And it's just amazing. God had his hands on us with that car so many times. But there one time it was us coming back from Minnesota, and we're in the hills of the Pennsylvania mountains. And we were coming back, and my dad just felt something. We pulled over to the side. Just like something's not right with the car. So he sees that the wheel's wobbling a little. So we coasted down into to a little town in Pennsylvania. We pulled into a gas station. The second we pulled into the gas station, the tie rod popped out. We could have been doing 70 miles an hour on the mountains in Pennsylvania, and that could have happened, and it would have been pretty. And what led up to that is something even more amazing. My dad was in Centerport, and he had the magazine. And he had an advertiser, this guy Carmen, who had this power brake company called Master Powers. He ended up going down to North Carolina, became very successful down there before selling the company. But he was talking to his wife a day or two before that, and he says, "You know what? I just feel in my heart that I need to give Amo brand new power brakes in that 32 Chevy." And he was just driving in Centerport, and he pulled into his house, and he said to my dad, "I'm going to give you power brakes." And we had power brakes on that mountain too, and it's amazing that we were able to stop when we could stop. But it would have been even more dangerous if that tie rod would have popped out when we were going that fast. So God bless that guy. So just a quick story. My mom and dad, when they first started dating, they went to Islip Speedway. I was born in Islip Speedway. I was a little kid, grew up at the racetrack. I was a little rugrat running around on the wooden benches there, getting splinters. My Matchbox cars playing around. Even at church, Jim could probably remember this one. Sunday nights playing with my Matchbox cars, laying down on the seats. My little Richard Petty Matchbox car, or other little stock cars and stuff like that. Being in church, laying on the floor, and making noises, and then they would say, "Shh, come on, we're in church." But racing made noise. So there was this driver named Bill Park. I actually became friends with him over the years at the racetrack. He used to have this yellow coupe, number 20, and somehow he got into this accident way up in the air, and he ended up hitting a light pole. The light pole was right in front of my family, my mom and my dad, when they first started dating. Bill Park doesn't remember this accident because he got knocked out. His car came crashing down on its roof, wheels up, still spinning. But my mom, all she remembers is the glass of the light exploded like it was some Hollywood movie. Thinking it's the greatest thing, turns to my dad and says, "We are coming back. This is awesome." Not sure who I should thank for my love of racing, my dad or my mom. But we'd end up going to Daytona, Florida for the 500 twice. Went to Dover, Delaware, and the Poconos in Pennsylvania a couple of times. So we used to travel seeing the races before the magazine. So my family was always doing something together. That's what's amazing is that even with the magazine, I was able to be around adults, doing photography, going around shooting with $100,000 car hot rods and stuff like that. And I looked older, I was younger, and guys would actually throw me their keys at 15 years old with their hot rods and say, "Yeah, you're driving around, go do this, go do that." I should have done it. Now I think about it. I was able to get to do that, but as the years went on, me and my dad found a love for hockey, which was just weird. I fell in love with hockey in 1983 at my aunt and uncle's house in their basement when I saw the Islanders play the Flyers. And this was like right at the end of their Stanley Cups, and I never got to see them win anything. I went to the Pat LaFontaine years. And then after that, just multiple guys that were like, "Yeah, these guys are going to do good." And this is all my mom would hear. "Yeah, but we're young. We're young. We're going to do good. We're young." They got a young team now, and they're actually doing good. So I got hope. So that's what a diehard fan does. You always root for your team. But my dad would always say, "How do you see the puck?" It was so weird to him, like how I loved hockey and what it meant to me. And he ended up falling in love with hockey a couple of years ago. And part of it was that he loved to spend time with me, on the couch. Whenever there was a hockey game, he'd be like, "All right, game tonight." He'd be on the couch and he'd be sitting there watching it with me. And we have a Yorkie, a little Yorkie named Armani. He's a rescue dog. I would never name my dog Armani. Yeah. Foo-foo name. But he's a manly dog. So whenever they would score the Islanders, we both go crazy and be like, "Yes!" The dog would actually come to me. We ended up teaching him. He would end up giving me high fives with his paws. And he would do it with one paw. And we'd get a treat every single time they scored. So he still goes crazy. And, it was a little heartbreaking this year. The Islanders finally won a playoff game. They haven't done that in 19 years. And my mom was next to me, at the end of that game. And, I was just like, I wish Dad was here, because he was in the rehab at the time. And, it would have meant something to him, just to be there. And it's a special bond that we had, towards the end of his life, besides hot rods and racing. It was just another thing that we both enjoyed together. So I'm going to be coming to a close shortly. James 3:17 reads, "But wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, it's peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy, and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness." My dad's life had many painful days. He struggled with health and was a fighter from the day he was born. He always told me he couldn't do things physically on his own, and he wasn't capable of doing certain things. He always taught me to go after what you love. You will never know without trying. And when you fall, you pick yourself back up and you brush off your hurts. And you continue to pursue the future. The wisdom of God that was installed inside my pop's heart, a discernment to know his wisdom, and to share the message that Christ is love. He would always say, "Let go and let God." That was one of his big mottos. The fruits produced from the wisdom of God was also installed in him, and set a light before him and guided the footsteps in his life. Independence can mean the world to a man, to roam freely, but inside there's a hollow feeling. Okay, I lost my place. Okay, it's kind of like a God hole, shaped hole. It's hollow. There's nothing there. It can only be filled with the dependence on Christ. This is what people have come and known that is everything to my father, his character and legacy. He didn't have liberty or freedom until he was set free from his past and his sins and the cares that he gave all to Jesus Christ. He was a broken vessel down here on earth, but his spirit man was whole. He's no longer a broken vessel. God's grace is amazing, and it's just that, it's amazing. Thank you, Pops, for all you taught me and installed in me. May your character, values, and legacies live on in me and my family, and those who are around me. Love you for eternity, Selah. I'm going to ask one of my dad's good friends to come up. Him and my dad were elders in the church, and he was there the night my dad got saved. And, he's also our plumber, and he comes over our house, to fix things, and it would end up being a 2-hour, 3-hour adventure of just talking on the couch. And, you always knew when Jim was coming over, there'd be some kind of session where it would just be a blessing, and him and my dad would share just the message of love of Christ with each other and encourage each other. So, Jim. Oh, come on.